Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at Game from Scratch for some pretty big news, actually. Now, last year, GitHub was finally purchased by Microsoft. That transaction ended, and a lot of us were wondering what exactly this would mean for the future of GitHub. And the first thing that they did was dropped the majority of their fees, making GitHub free and more capable for just about everybody, which was undeniably a win. And today we have another undeniable win. GitHub has launched GitHub Sponsors. Now, if you work in the world of open source game development, game engines such as Godot that you see in front of you right now, you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, it is currently funded by Patreon. And Patreon has kind of its upsides and its downsides. First off, Patreon takes some money from the developers. That's how Patreon operates. They are a business. And the other downside of Patreon is they can be, let's just call it a little arbitrary. You may recall back in July of 2018, the Armory game engine had its Patreon funding page just completely removed. It went from $1,600 a month, which is the goal they just hit, to completely closed, and everybody was refunded. Now, the details of that never did fully come out. It was very strange, but it was eye-opening how fragile or tenuous having Patreon as your sole funding source could actually be. And there's been a couple of stories like this of Patreon support simply going away. So that is where we sit now with GitHub Sponsors. Now, GitHub Sponsors is basically a way for you to support open source projects directly integrated inside of GitHub. And let's go here. We're thrilled to announce the beta of GitHub Sponsors, a new way to financially support the developers who build the open source software you use every day. Open source developers build the tools for the rest of us. GitHub Sponsors it is a new tool to help them succeed too. Now, the cool thing is this isn't just for a specific kind of projects, so like the Linux kernel or the Godot engine. It could actually be for documentation or tutorials, anything hosted on GitHub or any GitHub creator. You can basically hover over their name and say, I want to sponsor this person. And another really cool thing here is in this second paragraph. To jumpstart this new program and boost community funding, we're also launching the GitHub Sponsors Matching Fund. GitHub will match all contributions up to $5,000 during the developer's first year in GitHub Sponsors. That's pretty sweet. And then you're going to go through the details of it. Some of the main perks here is there are zero fees, at least up front. So open source is the heart of GitHub. The developers who build our shared digital infrastructure are what make this community so strong. As a thank you for these valuable contributions, GitHub Sponsors charges zero platform fees when you support the work of other developers. We also cover payment processing fees for the first 12 months of the program to celebrate the launch. 100% of your sponsorship goes to the developer. So they're not taking a cut, and they're also not taking, a lot of times when you use a credit card or whatever, it costs 2% or 3% on the transaction. They're eating that cost for the first year. So imagine after a year, they may start charging or deducting the actual payment processing cost, which is completely fair. But that is a huge change over Patreon. Patreon currently, I think, takes about 7 or 8%. So any developer that switches from Patreon over to this will get an extra 7%. On top of that, it is global. Basically, you can support payments all around the world in every country where GitHub does business. This is actually a bit of a gotcha with Patreon, where Patreon can't run in certain markets, or other funding systems that can't run in certain markets. So everywhere that GitHub operates, they are going to be able to take payments. And as I mentioned earlier, this isn't just for code. It's funding for all work that advances open source. Anyone who contributes to open source, whether through code, documentation, leadership, mentorship, design, and beyond, is eligible for sponsorship. So basically, if you have a GitHub account in good standings and you work on open source projects of some form, be it documentation, writing code, or as I say, mentoring, design, so on, you are eligible for sponsorship here. As one more way to contribute to open source, financially supporting the people who build and maintain it, funding individuals helps keep doing important work, expands opportunities to participate, and gives developers the recognition they deserve. Start today. Any GitHub user can sponsor any open source developer in the program. And it's native. It's directly built into GitHub itself. You kind of basically just click on the person's name and say, yes, I want to start sponsoring them. And you will see people that are sponsoring projects in the comments on GitHub. As you can see, just hover over the community contributor card. You can peek at the people who built your transitive dependencies. So this is some pretty cool stuff. We get into a little bit of the details of how you go about actually setting it up. You could also, again, still, there's no reason why this has to replace Patreon. Patrons can still be linked out externally. And at the same time, you got to keep in mind, Patreon does offer some things that aren't here. There's no tiered reward system here. This is a straight up, I want to sponsor you kind of system. Now, the cool thing, once again, that we kind of brushed over in the past is that matching system. We'll get back to that in just a second. Now here, if you're interested in getting signed up, here is the one downside for right now. It is using a waiting list. So you have to come to this page and hit join the waiting list while you are logged in, and we'll get you on the waiting list. So you have to be approved for this before you can go live. I have no idea how long that waiting list is, but that is the downside. You can't just immediately start using this. You sort of have to apply. I will... Well, this is actually the same page we were just looking at. So just go to github.com/sponsors for more details. The matching system and so on that I was talking about earlier on, that is available here. The only real details we have on that, it's pretty simple and straightforward. About the GitHub Sponsors Matching Fund. So to supercharge the community funding, GitHub created the GitHub Sponsors Matching Fund, which matches up to $5,000 per sponsor developer in their first year of sponsorship. In the first year, GitHub will not charge any fees, so 100% of sponsorships will go to the sponsored developer. In the future, we may charge a nominal processing fee. I gotta say that this one I was not expecting, but I fully appreciate it. GitHub is probably where 90% of open source projects are currently hosted. The fact that, and I think in a lot of open source projects, when they do something on Patreon, they really struggle to do tiers. I'm on Patreon, and I like Patreon. Patreon has a very good use, and it's very good for people like tutorial makers like myself, especially with other revenue sources like YouTube ads being so unreliable and so finicky. You can't just trust one source, same way as you can't just trust Patreon that way. But with code, doing tiers, it's a nightmare scenario, like a lot of times it's like, what are you going to do? Have added pull requests for a $5 tier and so on. Sometimes it's just a way to support a project. And then if you just want to say, here's my $10 a month or $12 a month or $100 a year for this project, and you don't really care about getting specific rewards back. Your reward is the success or the support of that project. And that's why this GitHub Sponsors is potentially quite great. Now, one of the things I really don't know about it, the facts are pretty sparse here, is how you can sponsor people. I don't know if it's a monthly thing or a one-time fee. I would love to see them do both. I get a lot of people or a lot of comments from people basically say, I'd love you to support you on Patreon, but I don't want to do a monthly thing. I'd like to do a one-off. And then a lot of times people will do a direct PayPal or something like that. And all of those are clunky. So hopefully GitHub gives you the ability to do a one-time sponsorship as well. But I gotta say, also adding in this up to $5,000 match, it's a nice perk, especially for smaller projects. So if you can get $1,000 worth of or $5,000 worth of backing on your project, that's a $10,000 for the first year. That's a big boost for a lot of open source projects. And another thing about this model is it does make open source as a business model for a smaller developer so much more viable, and it's all in one place. You just have to create your project, make it open source, make people like it, and then they've already got the built-in systems to fund you. I think that this is an interesting system. I think we will see a lot of these kind of projects being either supplemented or replaced. And in a lot of cases, there is no downside here. They could literally just add it as an option, or they literally just enable it on their account, and it's a supplemental revenue stream. So you can still be on Patreon, but people that are just in GitHub can see, oh, I can sponsor this project as well. And it gives a project such as the Godot game engine, or the Armory game engine, or Blender, or Krita, or GIMP, or any of these major open source projects, it gives them another immediate funding source that's as quick as basically applying on a waiting list. And you're just doing more of what you do, and it enables your community to interact with you much more directly. So this is a huge development. I'm very impressed by it, and I have to say, I'm really impressed by Microsoft's stewardship of GitHub so far. Now, I know a ton of people were all doom and gloom about this, that the world was going to end and they had to get the hell off of GitHub. But I really have to ask to those people, the people that really don't trust Microsoft, are you coming around? Are you, starting to think that Microsoft might be a different company than the embrace, extend, extinguish Microsoft we know in the past? Or do you still want nothing to do with GitHub? Anyways, this one is, no matter where your stance is on Microsoft and the ownership of GitHub, this one is a pure win for open source. I can see no downsides here at all. It could be a bit of a loss to crowdfunding sources such as Patreon, or even maybe other GoFundMe type services. But if you're in straight open source, this is it's a no-brainer. if you want financial support, I would say get on the waiting list now. And you as a GitHub user, have you wanted to support projects in the past but just didn't find a way, or they didn't have a patron page, or you just didn't want to deal with Patreon? Are you looking at this as a new opportunity to help support the open source projects you're all about? Or do you find maybe that we shouldn't be putting all of our eggs in one basket, that GitHub is already so important that we shouldn't give it even more priority, and that the funding should be separate from it? I'd be interested in hearing your opinions down below, but I don't think anyone can argue that this is a bit of a game changer. All right, that's it for now. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.